I grew up in a place where nothing much ever happened. Barrows Hollow, just a speck on the map hidden somewhere in the back roads of North Carolina. One diner, one gas station, a post office that closed in the 90s, and a whole lot of silence. People here whispered about things, but never out loud. And the loudest whisper was always about the old church on Barrow Hill. It sat alone at the edge of the woods, overlooking the town like a sentinel. A tall, decaying frame of what used to be a thriving place of worship. It burned down in 1954. Some say it was lightning. Others said it was something inside. 7 people died in the fire. The official record calls it an accident, a candle knocked over during midnight mass. But people around here, they don't believe that. Not really. And the pastor, Father Merritt, his body was never recovered. They tried rebuilding once back in the 70s, but weird things started happening during construction. Tools would vanish. Workers got sick. One even lost an eye in a freak accident. One day the crew just left everything behind. No warning, no explanation. The town let the church rot after that. When I was 17, my best friend Nate dared me to go inside. I said no. He said I was scared. I told him I wasn't. So of course I went. It was late, past midnight. The moon was behind clouds and the air smelled like wet dirt and old leaves. We had to climb a fence and crawl through a broken window. The moment I stepped inside, I felt it. The cold, not the kind of cold that comes with night, but the kind that feels like it's pressing in around you, crawling under your skin. The church was still intact somehow. The wooden pews were burned and warped, but still lined in rows. Charred hymn books lay scattered across the floor. The stained glass windows were black with soot, and the altar had long since collapsed, half covered in ash. But there were candles, fresh candles, half burned, placed neatly in their holders as if Mass had just ended minutes ago, and on the pulpit, a Bible open to the book of Revelation. I turned to Nate and whispered, "Did you do this?" He shook his head, but he looked pale, more pale than usual. And then the singing began, low, almost inaudible, a dozen voices humming a hymn I didn't recognize. It wasn't coming from the room. It was coming from beneath us. That's when we saw it. A trapdoor just behind the pulpit, old and rotting but open, only a sliver. We stepped closer and the singing grew louder. It wasn't beautiful. It was off, like too many voices layered on top of each other. Never quite in sync, dissonant, wrong. And it smelled like rot and smoke and something else. Something sickly sweet and decayed like meat left in the sun. I turned to Nate to say we should leave, but he was already frozen, staring at the trapdoor like he was in a trance. His lips were moving, but no sound was coming out. Then I saw it. A hand blackened, burned, reaching out from the darkness, fingers curling against the edge of the trapdoor. Then another hand. Then a third. I grabbed Nate's arm and yanked him back. He stumbled, blinked like he was waking up from a dream, and finally ran with me. We didn't stop until we were back on Main Street, panting under the flickering streetlights. We didn't say a word the whole way home. 2 days later, the church collapsed in on itself. No wind, no storm, just crumbled, like whatever was inside had finally had enough of being buried. The town sent a bulldozer up there a week later to clear the remains. But when they got there, the ground was untouched. The church was gone, but the land was clean. Too clean. No rubble, no ash, just grass, like it had never been there at all. Nate never came back from that night. Not really. He stopped talking, barely slept. A few months later, his parents sent him to live with relatives up north. I heard he doesn't speak anymore. Not a word in years. Sometimes I still drive past Barrow Hill. It's just an empty field now. But sometimes when I roll the windows down, I swear I can hear it. The faint sound of a hymn being sung by voices that don't belong. When I was 24, I moved to a quiet little town in West Virginia called Claymore Ridge. Population maybe 600 if you counted the stray dogs. I'd inherited a cabin from an uncle I never met. It sat a few miles outside of town, surrounded by thick pine woods and silence. I didn't mind the isolation. I was recovering from a rough few years, divorce, job loss, all that fun stuff. I figured the quiet would help me reset. The town was fine. People were polite, though not particularly friendly. Everyone smiled, but it was that kind of smile that didn't touch the eyes. The only warning I got was from the gas station guy on my first day. He leaned in while filling my tank and said, "Just don't drive after dark, especially not down Highway 22. Then he walked off like he hadn't said anything at all. Naturally, I drove Highway 22 the next night. It was late. I had gone into the next town for supplies and stayed too long. By the time I hit the road back, the sun had long set. Highway 22 was pitch black. No streetlights, no houses, just miles of winding road through the woods. About 10 minutes in, I saw him. A kid, maybe 10 or 11, standing on the shoulder, wearing a hoodie and jeans, just standing. No bike, no flashlight, no movement. I slowed the car. I don't know why. Maybe instinct. But as I passed, I looked in the mirror and he was gone. Not walking, not running, just gone. My stomach dropped. I turned the car around and drove back slowly, window down, calling out. Nothing. Just the sound of crickets in my own heartbeat. I turned again and kept driving. 2 minutes later and I saw him again, standing. Same spot, same posture, staring at the trees. I didn't slow down this time. I locked the doors and gripped the wheel tighter. I turned on the radio. Static. Changed the station. More static. Then I noticed something else. The road wasn't changing. Every bend looked the same. The same cracked yellow line, same leaning pine trees, same broken reflector sign, half torn from a pole. I'd driven this highway dozens of times in daylight. It wasn't that long. But now it felt endless. And then the kid appeared in front of the car. I hit the brakes so hard my seatbelt nearly choked me. But there was no impact, no scream, no sound. He wasn't there. The headlights lit up empty road. My breath was ragged, my fingers were numb on the wheel, then slowly the back seat creaked. I didn't look, I couldn't. I just drove, white-knuckled, eyes forward, refusing to blink. Eventually I saw the turn-off to my cabin. I nearly crashed into the ditch making the turn. I got out, didn't look back, and sprinted inside. I didn't sleep. The next day I asked someone at the diner about the road, about the kid. The waitress went pale and walked away. An old man at the counter leaned over and said, "He died on that road in '93, got hit by a drunk driver. Happens every year to someone new. You're lucky you didn't invite him in." I moved out 2 weeks later. Sometimes when I'm driving at night, no matter where I am, I'll glance in the mirror and swear I see a kid in a hoodie sitting in the back seat. My grandmother lived in a small agricultural town in northern Oregon where the fog rolls in thick and low across the apple orchards every fall. As a kid, I used to spend summers with her helping pick fruit or tagging along to the farmer's market. She had a rule, though, a strict one: never go into the orchard after sunset, she'd say. And when I asked why, she'd just mutter, "Because she comes out after dark." She never said who she was, and any time I pressed, she changed the subject. It scared me as a kid, but as I got older, I figured it was just an old folk tale, a story to keep kids from wandering into the woods at night. I was wrong. It was the summer I turned 16 when I finally broke the rule. It was a dare. My cousin Ben was staying with us that year, and one night he said, "You really believe that crap about the orchard?" I didn't want to admit that part of me still did. So we grabbed flashlights and crept out the back door just after 10 p.m. The orchard was dead silent. No bugs, no owls, not even the wind rustling the leaves. Just rows and rows of gnarled apple trees under a hazy silver moon. We walked maybe 200 feet into the trees, just far enough that the house lights disappeared behind the foliage. Ben was ahead of me, joking around, pretending to be scared. That's when we heard it. Crunch like a footstep on dry leaves. Then another and another coming from deeper in the orchard. Steady, slow, deliberate. Ben called out, "Hello?" We both aimed our flashlights toward the sound, but there was nothing there. just the long corridor of twisted branches and apples rotting in the grass. Then the smell hit us. Sweet, rotten like something dead left under the sun too long. I was about to suggest we head back when Ben froze. He was staring straight ahead. His flashlight shook in his hand. And then I saw her. At first I thought it was a scarecrow. She was tall, unnaturally tall, dressed in a white stained dress that hung like wet paper. Her head was tilted at an impossible angle, her hair stringy and black, soaked like she'd just come out of water. She wasn't moving, just staring. We didn't run at first. We just stared back. And then she started walking, not toward us, between the trees, parallel, silent, pacing like she was guarding something or waiting. Ben grabbed my arm and hissed, "We need to go." But when we turned, we couldn't find the way back. Every row looked the same. The orchard had shifted, or we had. We ran, stumbling over roots and dropped apples, branches clawing at our shirts, until we finally burst out of the trees and into the backyard, gasping for air. The house lights were back. The night noises had returned, but neither of us said a word. That was the last summer I visited. Ben refuses to talk about it to this day. He says he doesn't remember what we saw. But I think that's a lie, he tells himself. I asked my grandmother again one last time before I left. She only said this. They buried her in the orchard in 1912. She didn't want to stay dead, and then she walked away. I used to work as a seasonal park ranger in a small town near the Rocky Mountains. A place so quiet you could hear your own heartbeat if you stood still long enough. Most tourists passed through in the summer, stayed a few nights, then moved on. But the locals knew to stay clear of one place year-round, the old Aspen Loop Trail on the map. It was a simple 2.5-meter trail that wound through thick aspen forest and back again. But for years, hikers had gone missing. Search teams found their gear, their food, their tents, but not them. The reports were always the same. Phone batteries drained within minutes, compasses spun in circles, radios picked up nothing but static, and the trail never ended. I thought it was superstition until the day I saw it for myself. It was late October when a father and daughter from Idaho didn't return from a morning hike. I was part of the search crew that afternoon. Fog had rolled in thick and low, and the whole trail felt wrong, like the trees were watching. We followed boot prints for nearly 3 hours in circles. Every path we took led back to the same clearing. A broken bench, a pile of blackened firewood, and something else, a child's red mitten soaked and half buried in mud. We called out blue whistles, got nothing. Then my radio crackled, a voice faint and whispered, "Help!" "She's watching?" I asked for a repeat, static. 10 minutes later we heard laughter, not far. A little girl's giggle just behind the trees. We followed it, thinking maybe the daughter was playing some strange game. But what we found wasn't her. It was a circle of trees, perfectly spaced, like planted on purpose, with a dead deer in the center. No blood, no wounds, just placed there. Its eyes were wide open, frozen in terror. We reported back, and the official search was called off at dusk. They never found the bodies. The family's car remained in the parking lot for weeks until the police towed it away. A month later, I went back to the trail alone. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe, or something darker. This time I brought chalk. I marked the trees as I walked, one line every 30 feet. Halfway in, I saw the first line again, then the second, then the third. The trail had looped me. And then I heard it again. A laugh, closer this time, and a voice. "Keep walking." I ran, sprinting, crashing through brush and branches, ignoring the trail. I made it out, barely. I left the job 2 weeks later. Now, whenever I hear someone mention that town or that trail, I go quiet, because there's something in those woods, something that waits and watches and makes sure you never leave. In the early 2000s, I worked as a night shift bus driver for a rural transit company in Maine. My route ran from one small town to another, barely populated, winding through back roads, forests, and long stretches of nothing. Most nights I drove empty. Maybe 1 or 2 regulars would board, but otherwise it was me, the road, and the hum of the engine for hours. There was a rule we all followed. Always count your passengers before and after each stop. Not for tickets or safety, but because of what happened in the 80s. A driver named Dale reported seeing an extra passenger late one night. A woman in a long black coat sitting silently in the back row when he reached the last stop and asked her to get off. She vanished right in front of him. They say he quit the next morning, refused to even collect his last paycheck. I didn't believe the story until one night I saw her too. It was a rainy Thursday in November, the kind of night where the fog hugs the windshield and the headlights feel like flashlights in a tunnel. I had just pulled out of Pine Hollow, a ghost of a town with one working gas pump and a diner that hadn't been open in years. No one got on at the stop, or so I thought. About 20 minutes down the road, I checked the rearview mirror and froze. There was a figure sitting in the very last row, pale face, soaked black hair, hands folded in her lap. I didn't hear the door open, didn't feel the shift of the bus when she got on. I glanced again. She wasn't looking at me, just forward, motionless. My gut told me not to say anything, not to acknowledge her. I kept driving. At the next stop, a small station with a single dim bulb buzzing above the bench, I turned and said, "This is the end of the line." No movement. I stood, stepped halfway down the aisle, and she was gone. Seat empty, dry, but the floor was wet. A trail of water leading to the back exit, except that door hadn't opened all night. I filed a report. Management just nodded, didn't question me. One of the older drivers pulled me aside in the break room the next day and said, "She gets on sometimes. Don't ask questions, just drive." After that, I started noticing things once the bell rang, but no one was on board. Another time, I heard whispering coming from behind me, but the seats were all empty. And once, just once, I felt cold breath on my neck while stopped at a red light. I left the job a year later. Moved across the country, started fresh. But sometimes when I'm alone in the car late at night, I glance at the rearview mirror just in case. Because no matter where I go, I still check the back seat. Not every town appears on the map. Not every story makes the news. But in the dark corners of forgotten places, they wait. And if you're quiet enough, you might hear them too. If you enjoyed tonight's journey into the shadows, don't forget to subscribe to the Horror Channel 786 for more true horror stories every night. Leave a comment below telling us which story chilled you the most. And remember, some roads don't lead out, they only lead deeper in.